Texas running back Jonathon Brooks is one of the better running backs in the 2024 NFL draft, but he's coming off of an injury. We want to put his game underneath the prospect spotlight. How good is he? And can he be RB1? We're going to talk about this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I am a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. And you know, I got to kick this intro to my guy, Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at TheTalentCode. You talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ with those LSU Tigers, man. And what the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, where we are the number one source for everything NFL draft content. We talk draft prospects, we talk draft strategies, we talk draft philosophies. You're going to get it all over here at the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. DP, today, man, we are talking running backs. We're talking Jonathon Brooks, man. We're putting him under the spotlight. Who exactly is Jonathon Brooks? We have some people with him at running back 1. Some people have RB5. And so we're going to have a conversation with him. And then we're going to get into one of my favorite segments, the Dames Duel segment, where I put DP on a hot seat and I ask him, is this guy in the club or he's out of the club for Dames Duel? And then we're going to have a coach case, key thought to wrap this show up. But DP, before we get started, man, why don't you hit him with our title sponsor?
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. Prospect Spotlight. Texas star running back. No, not Bijan Robinson. That was a year ago. Jonathon Brooks. Keith, a guy that only 1 year production. A lot of us coming into the 2023 college football season, it's like, man, what is that run game for Texas going to look like now that Bijan's with the Atlanta Falcons? Well, Jonathon Brooks said, don't worry, I'll take the mantle and I'll handle business, right? This past season before getting hurt, I think he got hurt like late October in November, so he still had a couple games left on the season. 187 carries, 1,139 rush yards, and 11 touchdowns. And when I watched this game, Keith, I'm impressed by this young man. I think if he's healthy, he can test, because I think testing is going to be where I have the big question, like raw athleticism. I didn't see the breakaway home run speed, that third gear, that last gear, right? But I felt like he geared up quickly. He had quick initial bursts through the line of scrimmage within that first 5 to 12 yards. A good contact balance for the most part, really good footwork in terms of being able to navigate condensed boxes and spaces, tight quarters. A guy who knew how to find his way, ran with patience, but also, Keith, I think this is a guy that can also catch the ball out of the backfield and be a functional weapon in the passing game. I'm not saying he's going to be Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs and Alvin Kamara, but I think you can still target him 30, 40 times a season, especially in the screen game, the dump-off game, maybe run a couple Texas angle routes per game. I think this is a good running back, and he's a top 4 back for me when healthy, right? Like you said, some people got him as RB1. I don't know how you feel. He's not my RB1. I still have Trey Benson at RB1, and then Blake Corum at RB2. He's actually right behind him at RB3.
Okay, yeah, I'm somewhere, and I might have him at RB4. I might even throw Jalen right into that conversation at RB3. But I want to DP. We talked Spencer Rattler yesterday, right? So we talked about pro comparisons. Who are some pro comps for you early on? And I'm talking months ago, right? Probably October, November. I went Melvin Gordon, but I have to back off of that. I have to back over that after doing the real deep dive into him. I think Melvin had different gears and ran with a different level of physicality. Jonathon is a smooth guy. I thought Melvin Gordon was a straight line, explosive speed, just, one of those rare athletic running backs, right? That's what Melvin was. But Jonathon, I get more smooth and, finessing, not finesse in a bad way, but, being able to, get in out of holes and, one of those slippery type backs. So I want to ask you, do you have any comps for him in kind of career trajectory, even if he's just a career trajectory guy? Do you have any pro comps for him?
Man, cause I think what's the name? I haven't been able to pivot off of it. He's with the Vikings now. From Green Bay.
Aaron Jones.
Yes, Aaron Jones. I think that's been the somewhat of a comp and trajectory for me with him. Coming in at 6 foot, I think he's
so you're still envisioning. I want to ask you real quick. I don't want to cut you off. You're envisioning him being like a Pro Bowl, borderline All Pro type of running back.
I think he's got the ability, Keith. I do. I think he's got the ability to be that type of guy if given the opportunity, right? Like I think that's the biggest thing with all running backs is opportunity. Like with receivers, right? Target share. It's all about touches, and if you get them, when we talked about on yesterday's episode in the second segment, we talked about Trey Benson. I said, man, I love him in Dallas, right? And I think it's kind of low hanging fruit for Jonathon Brooks being at Texas and put him with the Dallas Cowboys, right? But I think let me go back. Another name that came to mind in terms of just the style of the style. I think Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon is more explosive because he was a legit athlete coming out of college and everything. But Joe Mixon also has that kind of smoothness to his game, especially early on. The footwork, the dead leg, the ability to really make guys miss in the hole, different stuff like that. But then he had that extra gear the way if you didn't contain Joe, that 15-yard runs turned to a 55-yard, 65, 75-yard run because he had that explosiveness. And, he just wasn't used as much as a receiver in that Cincinnati Bengals offense, but he could line up. He did it in college. He lined the ball all over the place and caught the ball. You know what I mean? I think that's another name that comes to mind. But I think athletic profiles are just different because, like you talked about with Melvin Gordon, that explosiveness, that burst, that speed, that open field speed is different. But I think, Aaron Jones with some like Joe Mixon built in, I think that's a good career arc for him where he's a plus level starter to, like I said, if you give him the carries and touches, maybe he could be a Pro Bowl guy, but he's talented.
Yeah, I'm trying to find what exactly do I want to land on, right? Because there are some things that he did that I really liked and I really enjoyed. And then there also, and I think you talked about this at the top of the show, right? Where the elite level athleticism, right? Where it's that breakaway speed and then like the breakaway burst and those type of things are kind of missing from the profile a little bit. So that's why I'm kind of stuck in where I want to go. Guys that I thought about in you kind of, it's all about timing, right? And that's why it's hard mentioning these names. So like if I say like a Rashad Penny, right, that's kind of like, oh man, you predicting this guy to get hurt all the time and be in and out of the, like, I'm not saying that from that perspective, right? But who people thought Rashad Penny was going to be, kind of as a running back, and then also just what he has done in spurts in Seattle, right? He has had 100-yard games, where it's like, man, this guy looks really talented and things like that. And then also from the contact balance situation, I would like to see improved contact balance from Jonathon Brooks. Also, I just think he's a very interesting case study. And honestly, we may have to revisit it like right before the draft, DP, because I feel like I need to watch him again. I probably watched him 3 times already, but he's just, because it's some reps where you're like, man, I love that. And then some reps where you kind of like, and it goes back and forth. It teeters back and forth as far as what you're looking at and what you're seeing. But it's going to be a fun conversation, and hopefully he rehabs, able to get back to 100%. And he is a guy that I think will help a backfield tremendously, right? Like you're talking about being a 1A, 1B. He can be that, thunder, lightning, and be either one of them, honestly, that he wants to be. But DP, let's keep going, man. It's on to the Dames Dudes segment where I put you on the hot seat, man. And I tell you, is this guy in the club or is this guy out of the club? So coming up next, man, it's Dame Dudes.
Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your number one ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your number one ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Keep your number one ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Guys, it's felt like it's been forever since I've been in the hot
DP. I think you've been ducking that smoke, DP.
I wouldn't say that.
You didn't want to fire up this segment, DP. I think that's what happened, man. But I'm excited to get it going. So let's get this Dames Dudes segment going, get you in the hot seat. I was about to call it a whole different name. I was about to call it a hot seat for Dames Dudes. But let's get this thing started with player number one. And DP, he better get in the club, DP. That's all I can say, man. He has to get in the club. And that is Alabama interior defensive lineman Justin Igboigbe. Where are we at?
Yeah. J.E. gets in. I really like J.E., man. Like, he's and I mean, we've talked about it like during the season. It was like, man, he just feels like that run-of-the-mill 5-tech Bama defensive end that's going to be stout versus the run. Then, just really getting into his tape, watching him at the Senior Bowl and everything. I'm like, man, like he could play some 4-eye and on third downs and rush the pass and collapse the pocket. I was like, okay, I like what he brings. And I remember tweeting out a clip where I can't remember if it was LSU. I think it was LSU. They put Mason Taylor, I think Jason Taylor's son on him in a run block situation. I was like, this is not going to end well. You know what I mean? And it didn't. He absolutely like closed the gap through just the power, the strength that he has. And like I said, I think there's upside for him as a pass rusher, man, on third downs. I don't think this is a guy that you have to take off the field. Yeah, he's in the club. I like J.E., man.
Okay, cool. I was hoping so. And listen, DP, I wasn't stopping him. That's a big old bar. That's real strong. I wasn't stopping.
I wasn't going to be at the door anyway.
If he was still trying to get in, I was not going to be there to stop him. Okay, there we go. Up next, man, we are switching. Going to the West Coast. We're going to defensive backs. We're going USC. We're going to a name that was fairly polarizing, but it's clear. Just kind of calmed down a lot, I guess is the best way to phrase it. Kalen Bullock, safety from USC. Is he in the club or out of the club, DP?
Nah, he's not in the club for me, kid. Like you said, in the summertime, people had him at safety one. Yes. The range, you heard some Ed Reed stuff and so forth and so on, right? And I think he ran 4.4 at the combine and everything. Yeah, he's a fast young man, great range. But I have concerns of like, okay, well, are you just a on the roof type of safety? Can you play some nickel? Can you play man to man? He's not a great tackler either, and I'm like, yeah, he's limited to a specific type of role, and that's like affecting the passing game, which I understand it's a passing league, but at some point you got to be able to tackle, break down one-on-one situations, and I just don't see that with him where I feel comfortable. So he's not getting in the club, Keith.
Yeah, DP, I think the proper way to phrase that right is that it's a passing league, but it's still tackle football, right? Like you're going to have to tackle somebody. Baby. Yeah, you're going to have to tackle somebody at some point. But DP, next up, I'm interested to get your take on this guy, DP. And I think I know which way you're going to go with this, and it's going to be really disappointing, and we're just going to have to talk about it. That is Texas tight end Jatavian Sanders. Is he in the club or out of the club, DP?
I struggle with this one, Keith. I struggle with this one. I see what you see, and I see what the detractors see with him as well. And me being that running back in me really values tight ends that can still run block well enough. I don't see that with him. He's not in the club, Keith. I'm gonna leave him out in the line. He's got to, listen to the music from the outside and stuff like that. Mike, you can sneak him a drink if you want. But
no, you know what, Jatav, you could come to my club, baby. You can come to my club. You're welcome. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna party. We're gonna play the same type of music. We're gonna turn up. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna have the confetti coming from the sky and everything else. So JT, you could come to my club, baby. I don't the blocking thing, we'll get it figured out. And if we don't figure it out, I'll just throw you the football. How about that, JT? We'll get that thing figured out, man. Next up, man, it's a guy from my neck of the woods, man, out there at Tulane, the quarterback. Michael Pratt, man, is he in the club or out of the club as far as Dame dudes, DP?
He's out of the club for me, Keith. I see a limited quarterback. I think this is I really walked into the Senior Bowl really excited to see him like just excel. I wanted him to. I wanted it for him. I wanted him to go out there and just ball out. And I didn't see that. I didn't see the confidence, the spin control. I didn't see the arm strength. And I was just like, I know he's mobile. He's a mobile guy. He's not a statue or anything. He's not Mac Jones in the pocket. But I just see like, okay, the situation for him is going to have to be really ideal in terms of weaponry, offensive line, stuff like that, where you're gonna win with him, not because of him. And because of that, you know how I feel about quarterbacks. I want a difference maker, man. I'm kind of on that Cam Newton train. This game manages and this game changes. I prefer game changes at the QB position.
Yeah, I agree. See, Cam, but he only named 3 people that's game changers, right? So that mean everybody else is game managers. So I guess you just find you a good game manager, or they're not good game managers and bad game managers. So be interesting. You know what? We need to bring that back up. That'll be another. It would be a good podcast, man. Once we get to the off season after draft. Next up, DP, and this is the last guy, North Carolina defensive tackle. This is a name that's not brought up much at all. He has a familiar name. And it's Myles Murphy. So, no, this is not the edge rusher from Clemson who's with the Cincinnati Bengals. This is the defensive tackle from North Carolina. Is Myles Murphy in the club, out of the club?
He's not in the club for me, Keith. He was at one point when I studied him 2 summers ago. You know, I was like, okay, there's something here. There's something here. He played with quickness and strength. And I'm like, man, he can collapse the pocket. He can, play duo gaps and handle multiple gaps, handle single gap responsibility. But I just like after that initial summer watch, I never saw this young man take that step as a pass rusher. I think he could be a rotational defensive lineman, especially teams that like you think about the Eagles and different teams that love to have a lot of depth on their D line. I think he'll be a good rotational guy. But for me, man, I wanted him to be that full-fledged player that he flashed couple years ago. I think it was like 2021 and everything like that. And I just have not seen that. I haven't seen that step or that growth. So no, he can't get in the club, man. He just kind of stayed linear. It was very flatlineish in terms of his development, in my opinion.
I get it. I understand it. DP, that was a tough go. That was a tough go. Today was an interesting night. Only one guy got into the club. We might have to condense this club and make it into a lounge, DP. Because we only let one guy in, man. Justin Eboigbe was the one guy who made it in, which I do agree with, man. But had to get into those draft prospects with DP. Next up, man, we bringing back what? Coach K's key thoughts. And I would stay tuned for this because I think this is going to be a fun and rather interesting conversation.
Thank y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. And it feels like this episode is a blast from the past. We're bringing back multiple staple segments. Coach K's key thought has returned. So, Coach K, what is the key thought of the day?
Yeah, so Locked On Bills podcast host, right? The Joe Marino, he tweeted out the 10 highest paid NFL wide receivers and where they were selected in the draft, right? And so you go Tyreek Hill selected in round 5, you go Devontae Adams selected middle of round 2, you go Cooper Kupp selected in round 3, AJ Brown selected in round 2, DK Metcalf selected in round 2, almost 3, Deebo Samuel round 2, Michael Pittman Jr. round 2. Then you finally get to Calvin Ridley he was picked number 8. He was a round 1 guy, and then you round that thing off with Terry McLaurin round 3, and then Stephon Diggs. He finishes out the top 10 at round 5. So that's only one guy in the first round, right? But I named off some very talking about Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, DK Metcalf, right? Calvin Ridley, Stephon Diggs. And only one guy, Calvin Ridley, was a round 1 wide receiver. So that brought me to the conversation of running backs, right? And we are a running back supportive podcast, DP. That's what we do. And so the conversation has always been, right, the reason why you don't draft running backs is because you can find value in later rounds. And that has always bothered me, DP. And that tweet, right, it backs up the whole notion that you can find a talented player at every position. in later rounds. So when I thought about that, I was like, man, you can even look at quarterbacks, right? Kirk Cousins is getting paid what, $40-50 million a year. He was a round 4 guy. Dak Prescott, right, leading the Dallas Cowboys, round 4 guy. It's so many. Brock Purdy, right, straight to the Super Bowl, round 7 guy. And so this is what happens. I look at it from the perspective of, they tell us like, hey, once you pay the quarterback, you can't pay, like other positions, right?
Yeah.
But I want to shift the conversation to putting more pressure on the general managers to simply get it right. Right, because they're talented players at every position across the NFL draft. Hit on your 2nd round pick, hit on your 3rd round pick, hit on your 4th round pick, hit on your 5th round pick, right? Because there are gems throughout the entire draft.
No, and I think that's a really strong thought, Keith, because at the end of the day, especially at receiver now, like, you know what I mean? And I had a conversation on Twitter, X as we call it now. Shout out Elon Musk for that crap. But like, I was having a conversation with somebody because Locked On host Alex Clancy tweeted out, well, trading back, right? For the Cardinals to trade back, trying to trade back and then trade back up, right? He's like, well, you trade back with the Vikings, get 11 and 23. You trade 11 and 23 to the Chargers to get back up to 5. And I'm just like, so you still finish out with 2 2024 first round picks. He was like, but you get a 2025 first. I'm like, okay, cool. But I'm staying at 4. I was like, I'm not getting cute with this because who knows if Jim Harbaugh looks at Marvin Harrison like, why would I bypass giving Justin Herbert, my quarterback, this guy? A guy that I watched terrorize me. Like, why would I bypass that? Coaches, and Keith, you can speak. Coaches typically love to get a guy on their team that they couldn't defend, right? Bill Belichick used to do it all the time. He struggled when Wes Welker was with the Dolphins in a limited role. He was like, man, this dude was giving me hell. Why am I bring him on my team? And then he had a great seat. He had a great career there. So I think like when you look at that situation, somebody was like, well, you can find receivers everywhere. I said, you can. I said, but if you're looking for a number 1, you typically want to go ahead and get the best guy on the board if you're in that range. And I think what people have to understand too, Keith, and you can speak to this from recruiting, the 7-on-7, like, that, like how we have AAU for basketball and these kids are playing basketball all the time. So by the time they get to college, by the time they get to the NFL, their handle is crisp, their shots are good, stuff like that, because they're playing ball all the time. Well, for receivers, these guys are coming into college more well-rounded already as high school prospects because of 7-on-7s and them playing receiver all the time. Travel ball. They're traveling to these different camps playing 7-on. So I think NFL Network just broadcasted the OTF 7, which is like one of them 7-on-7 tournaments and leagues and stuff like that. We see it all the time now. So I think that has really improved the quality of talent and the depth that we see year in and year out now at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's going to, because I just feel like, and, people have had valid points, right? But I wanted to bring that point up is that, there's talent at every position across the draft that doesn't go in the first round, right? And you look at quarterbacks, we still find quarterbacks in the 4th and 5th round, and that's an overdrafted position, right? Because you may in your gut give this guy a 3rd round grade, but you still know he's going top 10, right? Like to be completely honest. So I thought that was an interesting kind of perspective on it. And my thing is this, like, is the new quote unquote, I don't want to say like kind of smart brainiac thing to say is that, hey, watch this, wide receivers are going to be devalued, right? And it's just like, man, I just think that's so tough just to throw that label and saying devaluing positions and don't take a running back because you can find this, or don't take a wide receiver because you can find this. It's just like, man, like just simply draft better, right? Draft the good players, pay them, and then because you throw in the whole salary cap thing, and then everybody goes haywire because everybody has salary cap thoughts and how they feel about the salary cap. But you see teams move money around like crazy, right? All you have to do is
nobody ever wants to pay any player. Dallas Cowboy fans are in hell right now because they're like, well, we got to pay CD Lamb. We don't know what gonna happen with Dak, and we got to pay Micah Parsons. You got radio hosts in Dallas talking about there's people in the building that if they got rid of Micah Parsons, they'll be happy. I'm like, why y'all do this when it's time to pay that man?
Yeah, that's crazy.
The only position that I feel like that truly you rarely see enough depth in is tight end at year end now 2025 class. So that's a different story. We're gonna have that because
the 2022 class is really good
last
too.
year we had a really good tight end.
Yeah, the 2022 class is really good. Now, I'm that's true. I mean, even corners, right? Like corners, you can find depth with that, right? Like there's some third round corners out there that play very well. In certain schemes and situations, right? You got a Tariq Woolen who is matching Sauce Gardner right now, right? And one went in the first round, the top 5 pick, one went in the 5th round, right? And matching them
all pros and rookies.
Yep. And matching them in interception. So I just thought it was an interesting conversation. I really just wanted to, follow every day is, man, just put a different thought process on this, right? And it's like, okay, where do we change the energy and switch the energy? And just from my experience, like I said, man, just it's about acquiring, when we're talking about team building and roster building, just acquire as many dudes as possible, like high level players, right? Because every last one of those guys that was on their 2019 national championship team, right? And they were NFL guys, guys that went drafted in the NFL, they all made a significant play, right? You think about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, right? He's a running back, a D-value guy, but guess what he did? He made some key pivotal plays when we played Alabama, right? And so you just kind of think about that, and it's like, man, just acquire as many dudes as possible on your roster, and then you should have a good football team, and then go ahead and figure it out. So I'm gonna leave that right there. It's simple concept, baby. So man, I'm gonna leave that right there. Listen, that was Coach K's key thought, man, to wrap up that segment. To wrap up this show, man, it is another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to say shout out to every day. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Listen, man, I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Cool. Right there. That is my guy, my co-host. We go back and forth every single day, man. Damian Parson, you can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we always like to say, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free from YouTube on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Sorry for being our everyday. Guys, happy Friday. Have a safe weekend. And remember, come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.